I'm Liz. This is Brad. In the last couple of weeks, we've obviously been talking a lot about my dad, and we wanted to record some thoughts, some memories about things that we've been talking about. Dad was very affected early in life by the Great Depression, which was particularly severe in Canada. Started exactly 9 months after Dad's birth on January 29th of 1929. Because of the Depression, he not only experienced hunger, but ended up having to forego a lot of formal education at the time when he should have been going, and ended up doing some much later in life.
Choosing to work very early on to help support his family and provide food, basically.
Yeah, their father
support.
Ended up leaving the family during that time, and so there was a mother and 7 children who were
basically a single family. I mean, a single parent family. Yeah.
Yeah, and having to find funds in order to feed the family. So that's always been on his mind. We've talked a lot with Dad in the last month of his life about food insecurity. Brad's been working on some projects at Walsh having to do with...
Yep, we talked when he learned about the farm that we are running at the university, and more importantly, when he learned about why we are running the farm, because we have students and staff who are food insecure. Dad was very interested and was immediately volunteered to provide whatever help he could, particularly monetary help, to try to address the food insecurity at the university and here in the area. He was very interested in that. And,
yeah.
I remember being just surprised at how quickly and how forcefully he expressed his interest in trying to help those who didn't have enough food to eat.
Right. Yeah. He mentioned a few times how much he wanted to help those who were hungry, because he remembered that experience as a young person.
It was formative for him, I'm sure. At
the same time, he's been very interested in the kids at their core, and loves those kids, and some of them, we're calling him Grandpa or Richard. One little boy came up and said, "What's your name?" And became a good friend of his. And so the picture on the bulletin represents his love for those kids. So at Linda's suggestion that we have a place to put memorial gifts, we have designated, in the Weekenders Fund that the Canton Corps works with, that any memorial money that comes earmarked for Richard would go to that fund. 2 schools near the Corps run a program called this Weekenders. It's the food bank and the education department there, and on Friday afternoons, apparently when the kids are at recess, kids who are earmarked for this program, there have been as many as 390 of them for any given week. When they're at recess, the teachers go into their backpacks in the locker room or coat room, and stuff their backpacks with 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, 2 snacks to help get them through the weekend. So, because these are kids who get the majority of their meals at school. And so we thought that any money that comes in as a memorial to Dad would go to that program.
Those are obviously people who are food insecure, like Dad was, and so as a child, and so it seemed most appropriate to us
Very fitting.
that given Dad's background and experiences and given his interest in providing for those who were food insecure, that this would be a good way to honor him.
Yeah. The other thing that's been on my mind since Dad's accident 2 weeks ago is just how narrow, how fragile the space is between life and death. On a Saturday night, he was injured by, for anyone who doesn't know the circumstances, by a fall just in his bedroom when his head struck a piece of furniture in the bedroom. By the next morning, he had taken a significant turn for the worse as the bleed intensified, and he became unresponsive. So all day Sunday he was unresponsive. And then when I came in on a Sunday morning, I could hear his voice as I came down the hall. I thought I was imagining it. But then I went in his room and found him sitting up in a chair. He had showered and talked with the nurse most of the night. And he was sitting up eating, asking for seconds of food. And I couldn't make sense of it because he had basically been comatose the day before. And then as his condition deteriorated that afternoon, speech became garbled, and then by evening time he became unresponsive again. The next morning, I stayed there that night and he never regained consciousness. And the next morning I said to the doctor, she had called it a bonus day. I said, "Do you think we'll get another bonus day?" And she said, "No, I don't think so." But we made good use of that time, and everyone in the family got to speak to him and tell him of their love for him during that day, and those who could got in to see him. Even though I'm a nurse and I've seen death many times, it's just impressed on me just how fragile that space is between life and death, and how easily we can cross over to the other side. And so I've been thinking about Dad and his life, and the fact that he lived a very good 91 years. Life and death is still a mystery for me.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to share a few thoughts with you.
Yeah.
First, let me introduce myself. I'm Rob Knight, one of Richard's Canadian nephews. I have 3 fond memories of Richard. In the obituary, Liz said that Richard loved to travel. I remember on one of my motorcycle trips across the States, I stopped in for a visit. I hadn't even finished my first cup of coffee before Richard had the maps out, and he wanted me to show him my route and the things I had seen. He was one of those guys who couldn't wait to see what was around the next bend or over the next hill. Another time we were discussing the differences between the American and Canadian government. He asked me, "Why does Canada still have a queen? What is she good for, and what does she do?" My quick response caught him off guard. I said, "Well, she's good at modeling hats." He almost split his gut laughing. I know my answer had impressed him, because the next few times we talked, he asked if the Queen was still modeling hats. Now, I saved the best for last. I call it the Great Can-Am Water Fight. During the late 60s, the family came up to visit us in Toronto. It was a nice sunny day, so my dad and Richard were outside washing their cars. Dad was bending over washing the hubcaps, and Richard just couldn't help himself. He sprayed Dad with the hose. So Dad turned around and threw a bucket of water at him and got him good. Us kids were watching and decided to join in on the fun. We went to the backyard and filled up our play buckets from the inflatable pool. We all started dousing each other. Mark was still quite young, and nobody was getting him, so he jumped into the pool so he could be soaked just like the rest of us. The neighbors must have thought we were crazy, but boy did we have fun. Liz and I still reminisce about it. Richard was a prankster who could always be counted on to get up to some kind of mischief. In closing, Grace, Parker, and I send our deepest condolences to the whole LeCappelain clan. Always remember all of the good times you had with Richard. Rest in peace, Uncle Rich.
My favorite memory of Grandpa Richard was his goofy sense of humor, which I could really relate to and I really enjoyed. And I remember when I first met him that he was cracking a joke. I think he and Jean still lived in Arizona at the time, in Maricopa County. And so he introduced himself to me is that he was Richard from Maricopa in Arizona. And I don't know if that humor connects with everybody, but I really enjoyed that, and the glee on his face as he made that joke. And the funny thing is that I find myself, every time I hear something about Arizona, or especially Maricopa County, instantly I can hear him saying Maricopa in Arizona. And so I think that's pretty special. It was a neat moment of connection. And it's a testament to my experience of his kindness and just his, this joy that I experienced in his company. So that's something I'll hang on to for a long, long time, and something I miss.
So one of my favorite memories with Grandpa was just always going out to visit them at their place in Arizona. And at the time, Grandpa and Grandma were going through various varieties of camper vans at the time. And so one of my favorite memories is always Grandpa loading all the grandkids and everyone, whoever was there that summer, up in the van. We all got picnic lunches or whatever it was we were going to take, and went down to Luke Air Force Base to watch the F-16s coming in. That was always my favorite, hanging out with Grandpa, eating sandwiches, watching jet planes. It was always a special time.
Hi everyone. We really wish that we could be together with everyone to celebrate Grandpa's life. We are so incredibly grateful that Grandpa got to meet Romy and Parsley, actually. He was so sort of doting with his grandkids and now great-grandkids or great-granddogs. And we're just so happy that Romy had the chance to meet his great-grandfather, and we've got some great pictures from that event. Just in remembering lots of stories of Grandpa the last couple of weeks here, I've thought a lot about the story that he's told me many, many times of when I was a little kid, and he told me that God was his co-pilot, and I told him, well, then I'll sit on God's lap. And Grandpa loved to tell that story. Actually, I feel like Grandpa knew a good story once he had one, and he would make sure to repeat it. My dad still owes Grandpa a loonie for many, many years for the bet about whether or not a road could go underneath the river. So he was a character, and we were all lucky to have him in our lives. So we're sending our greetings here from Brooklyn, and we miss everybody, but sending lots of love and thinking a lot about Grandpa these days. Bye, Romy.
Hi, everyone. One thing I wanted to say about Grandpa is just what a very smart person he was, and just so innately curious about the world around him, and really the kind of person who understood that the world is always changing and that you have to change too in order to stay relevant. And he was the kind of person who just, really wanted to understand how things worked and had such a mind for systems And as you know, even though we were grandkids, it was so interesting to me that he would ask us questions about how things worked, especially like technology and things like that. You know, I thought of us just as kids, and yet he saw us as being able to help him in this interesting way. I liked that about him.
Hi, this is a letter from Richard Quinn, one of my cousins who lives in Quebec. He's a French and English speaker, but he was having some difficulty with the computer program to put this up. Now, Richard is actually my mother's first cousin, so he's my second cousin, and he wrote this very beautiful letter. Dear Jean, family, and friends, I hope everyone is well and fine. Today, I want to express my memories of a man I really loved. I used to call him Uncle Dick, and he was in my life since my youth. I sent Liz 2 pictures. We're going to try to show one of them here. These pictures represent all the brotherhood and friendship he had with my father, mother, Edward, Irene, Rose, Jean, Jean's mother, and other family members. When you look carefully at those pictures, you can see and feel that closeness, that solid family relationship. There was a bond among them. My heart kept many tender memories of those precious moments. Dick was a remarkable man. He had convictions about lifestyle, about spirituality, and about family life. For me, he was a joyous man, filled with charisma and always interested in us and in others. Curious, he often asked questions about our projects and gave sound advice. Also, just like Uncle George, he loved to tease us. I can still remember his bursts of laughter. You know, in one's life, we come across many people. Some of those people leave on us a very good influence, and Dick was such a person. He influenced me with what I called goodness and caring for others. Au revoir, Richard LeCappelain. It was really an honor for me to meet you. May God bless you always, Richard Quinn.
Everyone, I'm Linda, and this is my husband Jim and our youngest daughter, Carolyn. We just got in today from Los Angeles, and we came through the end of Hurricane Sally, or the beginning actually, in Charlotte, North Carolina. But we did great, and we're here to be with you this weekend, Mom, celebrating 91 and a half years of Dad. I just want to remind everybody who was at Dad's 90th birthday just a little while back here in Ohio, and he stood up and he told us a very funny story about how when he was a young man, he would lay out front of the house where they lived in North Bay, Ontario, and he would lay down in the grass and he would pray and ask God for a good wife and a good family. And he told us all that God had answered all of his prayers. But years later, when he met Mom, first time he laid eyes on her, he knew that he wanted to marry her. And he found out about her that she was, and he termed it, a prayer warrior. He explained to us she was always really good at praying for stuff, and God would answer her prayers too. And so, by virtue of being on the heels of his story about praying for a good wife and a good family, he knew that Mom back then had been praying at the same time for a husband to come along who was not only the most handsome man, but the wealthiest as well. I'm not making it up. They were there. Lots of you all were there. I'm not making it up. It was truth, and we videoed it, and we've been laughing our heads off ever since. Well, Dad says his prayers were answered, Mom. I'm not sure about yours. But anyway, we loved you both. We loved Dad very much, and we're going to miss him terribly. He was a good joke teller, and so we're remembering some of the times that he made us laugh.
Yeah, remember that we would talk to Dick and Jean each Saturday morning since they've been retired for many years. And we would talk to both of them, but he would always give me trouble about the Dodgers because he knew I was a Dodger fan, and he would always tell me the Arizona Diamondbacks were going to beat the Dodgers, and then when he moved to Cleveland, the Cleveland Indians were going to beat the Dodgers, and he'd always enjoy getting me upset
About the Dodgers.
about the Dodgers.
About the Dodgers. Well, another funnier than all get out episode occurred at our house on the night that Dad was promoted to glory, as we say in the Salvation Army. We were celebrating Matthew's 29th birthday as well on September 2nd. And we happened to turn the TV on after dinner. We were just watching Matt open some of his gifts. And guess who was playing the Dodgers?
The
The
Diamondbacks.
Diamondbacks. And they were giving the Dodgers a run for their money.
And they sure were. And we laughed and laughed and laughed. And I think the Dodgers beat the Arizona Diamondbacks.
In the end.
Just barely.
And we were talking to Dad all night that night, just thinking that he was watching and having a good laugh.
Yeah. And I was rooting for the Diamondbacks for once. And I just wanted to add one more thing about Grandpa. As we've talked about, that Grandpa loved to make people laugh, and he especially loved to make his grandchildren laugh. And one of the things he always said to me and the other grandkids when we came to visit, he would say to me, "Have you been a bad girl or a good boy?"
You could have told him you were a bad girl, and he would have still loved you.
He would have. And we'll really miss him, and we'll cherish him in our hearts. We love him so much.
So my favorite memory about Grandpa is when we took this trip to the Grand Canyon together. It was Grandpa, Grandma, my little sister, and I. And it was the first time Carolyn and I had ever seen the Grand Canyon, so that was really cool in general. But the one thing I remember about the trip in particular was when we were at this restaurant. We saw this guy come in, and he seemed to be struggling with something, and I remember pointing it out to Grandpa, like, you know, what's wrong with the guy? So as we're leaving, Grandpa goes and talks to the guy, and I guess the guy had just got out of prison and was having trouble contacting the people he needed to contact. So Grandpa lets him use his cell phone, he buys him a burger, and yeah, that's definitely something that's just stuck in my mind all these years about Grandpa. That's definitely the kind of person who he was. So, yeah, thanks.